most people call it like the law of attraction. I like to speak about like the law of vibration a little bit more. They just think it's so like foofy, faffy, philosophical out there, but the shit is real. If you believe it or not, like if you believe in the law of gravity or not, that's the phone's like, it's going to do its thing. Right? It's going to do its thing. I don't know if you catch that on video or not. Yes, you'll figure it out later. I'm sitting here. I came to one of your events, I'm going to say probably about a decade ago, okay? Paramount.
Paramount,
Woodbridge. So whenever that kind of opened up, that's when you shifted maybe doing, I think there was, I don't know, 2,000 people there or something. Like it was friggin' huge, okay? You're, like, I'm in the back. I just kind of came a little later. I'm in the back. You're up front. And I'm watching you speak, do your thing. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, I wonder if, like, I'm going to ever sit down with this guy. Like, you know, I wonder if I'm going to be on stage. Fast forward a decade. Like, I've been thinking about stuff like that. I got to speak on one of your stages. Thank you for that. I'm sitting with you now. The stuff actually works. Like, if you, whatever you, unfortunately, if you put your mind on negative shit, you're going to get more of that as well, right? And so I don't know, like, how you help someone understand that more. Because I wish I could. I wish I could give somebody an injection for them to understand, like, whatever you focus on, you will bring about.
Well, we call it, like, it's another tool we have. It's called Future Focus, right? So, and again, I've done this myself. This isn't stuff I just sort of, you know, oh, here's a good idea, let's try that. This is basically what I've really done most of my life. And here's how it started. I'll never forget, was my first year in real estate in Peterborough, I had a good year. Like, I was 24 years old. Like, I was making more money than anybody in my family had ever made in my first year. Like, it was crazy.
Get a lot of trouble, into a lot of trouble. 24-year-old making money. I get it.
And now I was working, like, 20 hours a day, but whatever. Well, after I hit a goal that one year, and it was my manager, Don Harriman, that sat me down. And so what happened, I walked in the office one day, Don Harriman's there. We're coming into a new year. I had been in the real estate business since July. We're moving into my, first full year, January to December. He goes, how much money do you want to make next year? And I had no idea. Like, I said, well, I don't know. He goes, well, pick a number. And to impress him, I said $100,000.
Okay. And that was still a lot of money back then. A lot of money.
Average house was $40,000.
Okay,
you know what I mean?
exactly.
Like, it was a lot, right? You know what I mean? Back in those days. That was a long time ago, right? So anyway, he said, okay. He goes, so what I want you to do is wake up every morning, and I want you to remind yourself how much money you want to make, and then ask yourself, what do I need to do today to move towards that goal? Now, I didn't really, there was nothing crazy. I didn't write it down, nothing, I got it, thought about it, blah, 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 and I'm going to get Donnie, whatever you think. The end of the year, I made $102,000, okay? And because I just kept thinking about that goal. And if he hadn't asked me that question, I don't know what I would have made. Maybe 40. I don't know. You know what I mean? Because
you wouldn't have thought about it.
I wouldn't even have thought about it, right? So I got depressed. I went into the next year. Like, I was sad. It was awful, right? So I went to my family doctor. Okay? His name was Dr. Caskey. He looked after our whole family. I went in to see him, and I said, Doc, there's something wrong with me, man. I don't know. You got to check me out. I'm freaking out, right? Like, physically, there's something wrong with me. And so anyway, he does the whole check out, and he goes, I don't know. I think you're fine, right? And then he started asking me questions, and he started saying, I see your name in the paper. You're in real estate now, aren't you? I said, yeah, I am. And he said, well, boy, really good for you. What got you? And we just started talking. He goes, well, how long? I told him about a year and a half now. And he said, so how you enjoying it? I said, oh, man. I said, it's just so much fun. I said, I made over $100,000 last year. Like, I was so proud. I want to tell the world, right? And now I spent $150, but that's another story. So anyway, so he said, well, good for you. He says, you made more money than me. That's what he said, a doctor, right? And so this is a kid that left college after 3 months, right? So anyway, and he said to me something. He goes, well, what do you got planned this year? And I remember I looked at him and I said, I haven't really thought much about it. And this is a doctor. Like, this probably wouldn't happen a lot today. Yes. You don't have that much time with them. But back then you did. He goes, I'm just thinking to myself, you had a really good year. You're not motivated right now. You probably don't need, money this month, that sort of thing. He goes, I think you got to go decide, set some goals for yourself. Well, I went home that day and I sat down at the kitchen table and I wrote down everything I wanted to do before I died. Now, some of it was...
Wow, you went down that that far out.
I did.
As well.
I just wrote down and I said, what do I want to do before I die? That's what I wrote on the top of a pad. It was just a white pad. And I just started writing crazy, crazy stuff, right? Now, a lot of it was crazy.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
A lot of it after I looked
I
like
think
a
that's
really...
important, right, Richard? Because you didn't stop your brain.
Right.
Like, you just kept going. Right. Like there's no right or wrong. You didn't give that moment in between to say, this is a dumb idea, Richard. Like, that person on your shoulder.
Just let her go.
Let her go.
Let her go, right?
Yes.
So I wrote all this stuff down, and then I wrote down, because I remember Don asked me how much I want to make. He didn't ask me that year. You know what I mean? So anyway, I wrote down how much money I want to make. Bingo, I go out and start doing it all again. Now, one thing I wrote down on that pad was I wanted to fly a fighter jet.
Okay.
I flew a fighter jet.
Wow.
I had no idea how I was going to fly a fighter jet, but I got asked to speak in South Africa. And I landed in South Africa. My dad's with me, right? So we turned into a little bit of a trip. We check into the Sheraton Hotel in Cape Town, and on the table, right in front of the couch, there was a book. You know those magazines they have?
Yeah.
And on it, it said, fly a fighter jet in South Africa. Now, I had written this down 20 years before, but I still had it on my list, right? So I look at this, and of course, then I go out that night with dinner with my dad. My dad knew it was on my list, and he goes, you see, you can fly a fighter jet here. Maybe this is it. And I had phoned to find out how much it was, and it was a fair amount of money.
Sure.
So I said to my dad, I said, I phoned, like it's like, $7,500 US. Like, oh my God, that's a lot of money. I can't afford that. Yeah. So my dad, he worked for us many years, wonderful, wonderful man. And he looks at me, he goes, oh, Mr. Motivation Man, eh? Oh, yeah. The guy tells everybody else to go chase their dreams, and you got that right, you're not going to do it. Well, guess what I'm doing 3 days later? I went to this place called Thunder City. So think about that concept there, future focus. So since then, I do it digitally now, but I have this journal, and I still have all the things I want to do before I die. And every year, I just set certain goals, right?
Yeah.
But what I do is I get up every morning, and the first thing I look at in the morning is that journal, right? And then I do some journaling, but the first thing I do, because I've got it pinned at the top, is I remind myself of those goals. Because I have proven to myself, beyond the shadow of a doubt, you can write the weirdest things down. But if I hadn't written down that I wanted to fly a fighter jet, I would never noticed that magazine. You see? The reticular activator.
Yes.
When there's something in your head, when there's a desire in your head, you see the opportunities. Another example. If you want to make $1 million, right? The ideas are all there to make $1 million. You want to make 100,000? The ideas are all there to make 100,000. The minute you go from 100 to 1 million, guess what ideas you start to find? The $1 million ideas, not the $100,000 ideas, right? Like the world is abundant.
Yes.
It's all possible, right?
Yes.
I truly believe that. But some of us, we're just keeping ourselves too small, right? And people could argue maybe I'm keeping myself too small.
100%.
Like all of us, right?
Yeah, all of us.
All of us,
yeah,
right?
for
I
sure.
can look at other people and I go, boy, look what they've done, right?
Right. And I mean, there's SCITO, which stands for Stop Comparing Yourself to Others, because there will always be somebody has more than you. There'll be people who have less than you. Right. But to your point, I mean, the reticular activator system in your brain has been there long before Google.
Yes.
And the reason I use that analogy is because, like Google, when you give yourself a question, your brain will find the answer.
Yes.
It's just some people are not patient enough to hold off. Like you want to try to bring a cup of coffee into your life, that might happen in an hour or a day. When you're looking to build $1 million business, well, give it some time.
Yes.
Like you can't like go to the backyard work out one day and then look in the mirror and say like, where's my muscles? They'll laugh at you. Like, are you new to this? Like this stuff takes time, right?